Hi, everybody. I've always wanted to say this, but live from New York, it's Wednesday afternoon. I'm here in New York for the week. It's my first business trip in 15 months and only my third flight in the last year and a half. And it's amazing. I don't know what you've heard about New York lately. I'm going to move the camera here just a bit, excuse me. There we go, that's better. I don't know what you've heard about New York, watching the news, but New York is back. People are out on the street. It's wonderful. People are biking, jogging, eating out on patios, eating inside restaurants. Today is actually the first day that you're allowed to go outside without a mask legally. So that's actually pretty cool. I've gotten to see some friends here that originally said they weren't going to be seeing anyone. But let's talk about what's going on in music and technology. Sony this week bought out the remainder of what they didn't own of AWOL, Artists Without a Label. So that's pretty cool. Universal Music Group is selling another 10% of the company to an unknown suitor. We don't know who this is yet. Our friend and companion Daniel Ek of Spotify offered to buy the Arsenal Football Club. They said they don't need his money. So that's an interesting moment. The biggest thing, though, that's happened that probably is at the center of what I focus on is that Apple went high res this week. They are doing, let me see if I can find the exact Apple, one second here, bear with me. For those of you who know me, it's all, so get the news here. So they're doing spatial audio and lossless audio. They're going to be working with Dolby Atmos, which is pretty amazing. It will bring some new features to their headphones, to the to the Apple AirPod headphones that have multiple little speakers in them and microphones. You will have true spatial audio. That's pretty cool. Amazon is doing the same thing. They're also offering the audio and lossless at no extra price, no extra cost. Oliver Shusher, who is the head of Apple Music, who's a great guy, announced that Apple's Music is making its biggest advancement ever in sound quality. Listening to a song in Dolby Atmos is like magic. And I'll jump in here and say, yes, it is. Dolby Atmos is fantastic. It's going to make everything sound a lot better. It's also going to support spatial audio, which gives you a much more immersive audio experience. So that's really cool. In the digital transition that we've been in over the last 20 years, we went from digital provided convenience to ultimately hoping that digital provided quality. And we saw this at first with photography, where digital cameras allowed you to take, quote, as many pictures as you want. You weren't relegated anymore to 24 or 36 exposures on a roll of regular film. The problem was the original digital cameras pretty much sucked for about the first 5 to almost 10 years. You had red eye, you had pixelization, and then all of a sudden they got good. And it showed that there was a path for audio, that things could get better. So we're there now. Between Qobuz, the French music service that I worked with a couple of years ago, offering high-res 24-bit 96, 192 really studio quality files. Tidal doing a similar thing. And then Amazon offering Amazon HD. We now have Apple jumping in the mix. So we can finally hear music at a level that approaches what it sounds like in the studio. If you get to hear 24-bit 192, it's like being at the mixing console. Another thing that I want to touch on that's happened in the last couple of weeks, I think, since the last show I did, an industry legend, Al Schmidt, passed away. And Al was an amazing engineer, an amazing producer. Al was the engineer with Tommy LaPuma when he produced George Benson and Michael Franks and Al Jarreau. On his own, he produced Diana Krall and Elvis Costello and a bunch of other artists. But Al was a perfectionist. He was all about quality, but he was also really a mensch. He was a great guy who was incredibly humble and incredibly fun to work with. And the thing that shocked me, he had been working up until a few weeks ago. He passed away at 92 years old. I had no idea that he was 92. And now it's time for my first shot of Coke Zero. So, you know, I think in his legacy that he leaves behind is his attention to quality and his attention to providing listeners with the best possible experience. So that was a sad passing, but he's left literally a legacy of you know, just great music. Other things that have happened. Let me see here. Go back a bit for a moment. Go back to our friends here at Music Business Worldwide. There we are. Geez, I sound so much more prepared when I'm sitting at my desk. You know, we have a continuing round of masters being acquired by labels, by concerns like Merck Mercurius and others. People are buying up catalogs. Believe just did a $600 million IPO. Believe Digital. So music is in a better position now than it was pre-Napster, pre-Kazaa. We're in a situation where music companies are more profitable. The process is more streamlined. For better or for worse, with the exception of vinyl and maybe even cassettes now, there is no manufacturing, there is no shipping, there is no returns. So it's a pretty good place to be. And as I look out down under Broadway here, I'm at 29th and Broadway in New York, things are looking up. I think we're outside the pandemic. I think we're ready to do business. And right now I'm ready to bring on an old friend and my guest, Susan Paley. So come on in.
I'm in.
Susan, how are you?
I'm good. How's New York? It's been a long time since I've been there, and I miss the food and the action and the people. And
it's wonderful. I got here 2 days ago. I immediately found, I'm going to drive everybody crazy, I found my new favorite hang. This is sushi and Chinese food. And now that we're coming out of pandemic, see if I can find it here. I've decided it's time to go back on a diet. So for the past 2 nights, I've had, let's see if this works. Oh, this is basically barbecued pork, and I forget the broccoli is green. It's coming up on the green screen. But I had broccoli, sauteed bok choy, and roasted pork. So, awesome. And our friend David Hyman from Unagi Scooters arranged for me to rent a scooter here in New York. And so if you're in New York right now and you see a madman going the wrong direction on Madison or Fifth Avenue on a scooter, that's me. I've been
And not just any scooter, a beautiful scooter.
A beautiful scooter, but yes. I just had a guy, I ran to get, because I need sodas for this whole call. I ran to get 4 Diet Cokes from 7-Eleven around the corner, and I was scootering up Fifth Avenue against the traffic. And a guy screamed at me, "You're going the wrong way, you crazy idiot." And I started to follow him to go the right way and drive him off the road, but I didn't. So New York's wonderful. Everybody, it isn't like what you see on Good Morning America, where it looks like Midtown is a ghost town. It's fantastic. From the time I got into Midtown, Monday morning at 8:30 by Madison Square Garden, I came into Penn Station. I went, it's back. We're coming out the other side of this. So I'm feeling really hopeful about, not only the pandemic, but getting back to business and, doing what we love. So, Susan, I have known you now for 17 years, maybe 18.
Yeah, you've known me for 18.
18 years. Yeah. So for a moment, bring everybody just up to speed. I always ask everyone, how did you first get into media and technology? Well, who gave you your first break, or what's the first thing you did? And then talk about your timeline a little bit.
Okay. So like many people, I think, who are of a certain age, we came out here for entertainment.
Right.
Entertainment really started emerging early. Like if you think about the first, internet companies, what did they do? They serviced the entertainment industry. So they would build basically the equivalent of web wallpaper, which is,
right.
Websites for all the movie studios. And I actually worked with a guy named Chris Payne, who became a pretty well-known documentary filmmaker. And from there, our company was acquired. And I had been in the entertainment business. I got like really deep into technology. I realized I needed to learn marketing and branding. So I did a stint with Siegel and Gale. Realized I didn't want to be on the client side of things. And so, on the service side. So I really wanted to build things. And the first wave of accelerators, which those of a certain age know, they were known as incubators. I worked with a guy named David Henkin, who's another LA legend. And we were doing some work for Universal Studios. And then from there, I went to Shelter Ventures, which was kind of that first wave with Kevin Wall. And the whole idea behind this.
You're a Kevin survivor.
I am a Kevin survivor. Kevin is a fantastically amazing, gifted guy, right? He's really self-made. It's the true pull yourself up by your bootstrap story. With he and his 11 brothers and sisters that, he really has created an empire for himself.
So this will be my first interjection.
Yeah.
I met Kevin when I moved to LA in 1978. A friend of mine named Barry Corkin at A&M Records said, you have to meet my friend Kevin. He has a company called Phoenix Staging. He's building stages for music festivals. That was the first iteration. Kevin has had so many acts in his play. The next time I met him, he was working on Live Aid and Farm Aid and the Prince's Trust. He was doing
that. He did Box Top and all. He was the early.
And he had Box Top. Mm-hmm. I mean, he has gone, and I'm saying this in a positive way. So if you know Kevin, I mean this I went one time to visit him. His office was over Tower Records, and there were like 20 people in the office. I came back about 9 months later. It's Kevin and a bunch of desks, and then I came back a few months later, and it was Kevin and 30 people at desks. He literally has never been stumped by, if something doesn't work, then there's something else to try. And he's been inspirational in terms of the various, incarnations of Kevin Wall.
Yeah, he told me one story that was, first of all, he grew up behind a roller rink in Indiana, right? Which is kind of an amazing story of just like doing the whole roller rink thing. Anyway, this was probably 70s or something. He literally was trying to get this deal done, and he was down to his last couple dollars. Like it's one of those stories, right? And He literally was going into a meeting, and he didn't really have enough money for the parking meter. He was very nervous about paying the meter. And so he had to go, he parked really far away, and this was the make or break meeting. And if it went wrong, he was basically completely out of money. And he was on that knife's edge, had a great meeting because he is a promoter, and took off from there. But you never know. There's always that meeting that can change your life. And he had one of those experiences, this is do or die, right? I mean, I've heard so many of these stories for people who are doing technology, who are doing startups. It's like that do or die moment, and where you have to dig deep, and hopefully you come out the other side.
Yeah, I remember going up to Box Top. It turned out that Box Top serendipitously was in the same building as Philips Media on Wilshire. And when I went up to visit him, and then he introduced me that's how I met Jason Fiber, who I think you may know.
Oh yeah, I know Jason. Yeah.
And Jason gave me a tour of the indoor miniature golf course in the hallway, which I thought was hilarious. There was like 9 holes of miniature golf as you walked around the office. So, so You worked with Kevin. I'm sorry.
It's okay. So work with Kevin.
He's somebody that somebody should know about, because he literally, his name pops. He's like Zelig in terms of he's been involved in so many ventures that you go, he couldn't have done all this stuff in one lifetime.
Yeah, no, he is a pretty amazing guy, and he's still doing a lot of investing and sees things early. I think so from there, we did kind of the first incubator. And then I really I found a company that was out of UCLA's electrical engineering lab, and they were trying to pitch hardware, but they didn't understand it was really a software platform. And so I started working with them, and it was as how I met you, which was called Fat Noise. And it's doesn't date ourselves with the PHATNOISE, which is, complete 90s. Right. And they really were some brilliant guys. And the whole idea was, this is the first days of MP3s before an iPod. And the whole idea was like, where do you want to listen to music? You want to listen to it in the car. And so how do you take the thousands of MP3 tracks you have and play them back in the car? And so these guys had reverse engineered all the automotive protocols and replaced a CD changer with basically what looked like an amplifier, but it was really a CD changer style that actually took a hard drive. And so you could now play thousands of tracks in the car. And we had done some text-to-speech interfaces, and then I ended up doing all of the first actually digital content deals for the car. And this was when nobody understood like putting a hard drive in the car. And then we're working with, I remember I did deals with Capcom, Nickelodeon, Universal, Audible. And it was, the fun time where you're trying to invent everything. And I'm like, okay, I want all this content to be locked, but I want little promos, and you can have codes that you key in, and then it unlocks the content. You can buy it. And I just remember being on the phone with lawyers, and they're like, wait, so you want to do what? And so just trying to figure out, like, this is really before digital content distribution really existed. So this was a deal we did with GM. And it was one of those funny moments where we think, okay, we're a startup in West LA, and there's 30 of us. And now we're going to be a tier 1 supplier to GM, which is not normal.
It's like supplying to the military.
Exactly. And so they have a whole thing, which is like human machine interface. And we were terrified to go in there and like have them look at the software interface where you actually could select, unlocking the content and navigate. And we thought we're going to get crushed. And so we flew to Detroit. We went through it with the engineers. They pressed a few buttons, and they're like, seems okay. We're like, oh my God, that's the qualification, because it was so early that no one understood really software in the car. This was before you had nav on screens, because the first hard drives in the car, besides what we did, was navigation. And that didn't even exist yet. So from there, we got acquired by Harman International. And I ran business development and sort of strategic partnerships for the consumer group. And the whole idea was that the JBL brand was sunsetting, because it was the brand of Woodstock, and that only has credence for so long. When the guys at Woodstock are almost 70, you're going to need to reinvent your brand to appeal to youth.
Yes, we are.
Mm-hmm. So anyway, I ended up doing a deal with Roxy and Quicksilver, and we did a joint venture, really trying to talk to youth again. And it was a really great sort of joint venture where Harman could do all the audio, the acoustics, we could do all the manufacturing, and then Roxy and Quicksilver do what they did best, which was like the colorways, the packaging, the communications. And it was great because we actually opened up doors for them. They had never been in big box retail, like when big box retail was the thing, a Best Buy, et cetera. And then they got us into other areas we were not in, like the Zoomies and the PacSuns. So it was a really successful partnership. And from there, I met Jimmy and Dre. And this was early on when the whole idea behind Beats was going to be a licensing company. It was going to license sort of a signature sound to different consumer electronics companies. And when I met them,
they were going to be the hip version of THX certification,
with a little more style.
Yeah, a hip version of THX.
Yes. And they came to us, and I realized that we could actually be their partner for automotive, because Harman really owned the automotive space, both aftermarket and OE. And so I pitched them on this, like, okay, we can be your automotive partner. And they're like, that's great. And then we're trying to negotiate the deal. And then Steve Berman, who's Jimmy's right-hand guy, called me and said, hey, we all have day jobs. Can you come run this thing called Beats? And I thought it was, I was like, well, are you guys really serious about this? Because the entertainment ADD thing, you always hear that juxtaposition. And I said, okay. And so they said, yeah, this is going to be $1 billion company. I'm like, okay. I not knowing right then what I know now. And I showed up the first day and I thought, oh my gosh, like this company has to be built from the ground up. Like there's, Jimmy's going to want an exit, and as he should, and we need to build a sustaining company that can be sold without Jimmy.
Right.
So it was a crazy, crazy rocket ship. It was an amazing, amazing experience. I learned, it was like going to business school, getting a master's and a PhD at the same time, working for those guys.
So second interjection.
Mm-hmm.
Steve Berman is, again, for me, one of the most wonderful people I've had the privilege to know. I mean, you'll hear me probably in this conversation talk about people that are a mensch. Steve Berman is like, I'd take a bullet for him.
Yeah, he was the kind of guy where if you would get mad because you were waiting for him to do something or, on him, and you'd be like, Steve, and then you'd be so like pissed, and then you go and talk to him and he would say something that was so insanely funny.
Right.
And then you're mad because you're laughing so hard that you can never be mad at him. I mean, he was like everybody loved. He could go into the most fractious situations with artists and managers, whatever. And by the time he walks out, everyone's laughing and smiling.
Right. Right. So I'm sorry, but I had to inject because he's one of my favorite people on the planet, along with you. So
anyway. So Beats was the crazy, crazy, crazy ride. And then before I left Beats, I got introduced to technology.
Go back. I'm gonna make you go back then.
Yeah.
Talk about, there are like 7 different versions of the history of Beats and Monster without violating any NDAs. What's your version of Monster partnering with Beats and then Beats leaving Monster, et cetera? Because you hear Noel's version, you hear tech trade people write about it, as much as you can. What was that like at the beginning, in the middle, and how did that end?
So, I definitely lived the Monster situation, and really when I walked in, Beats had to deal with Monster, and Monster was responsible for distribution and manufacturing of speakers and headphones.
Right.
And so they took. And really, honestly, and I've said this to a bunch of different people over the years, Monster was probably the best partner that Beats could have ever selected of a CE partner early on, because someone like Harman had, they have an internal go or no go, right? Like, what is the margin? And if I can't make this margin, I'm not doing it.
Right.
But Noel was a frustrated musician.
Right.
So Noel really, and I think Kevin, to his credit, Kevin is Noel's the big monster. Kevin was the little monster. That's how they're affectionately known. Kevin and the absolute jazz fanatic. Kevin saw what Beats could be. Noel, I think, was more suspect at first, and so Kevin really convinced Noel to do the deal. And then Noel, once he got involved, was like, "Oh my God, this is the music career that I never got to have." Right, and so he became absolutely starstruck, and because he was so starstruck, one, he gave so much leeway to product development, right? Like he really was like, okay, well, we'll do 20 different versions of the first headphone, right? I don't care what it costs, right? Jimmy and Dre, if you need it to be like this, it's going to be like this. The other thing that he brought to the table was, at that point, Monster was probably they had the best relationship with Best Buy of any CE brand.
Right.
Noel understood how to sell accessories better than anybody. He literally trained the blue shirts at Best Buy, and he also trained Sears when Sears was around, right? Because he really understood that you could sell a cable, $125 HDMI cable that had gold plating that was the same as a $10 cable. And so because he was so good at that, Beats was really advantaged by when they went into Best Buy, right? He had the right spiff programs, like he really understood retail. And he explain
what a spiff program is. And also I wanted to stop and just say, Noel was the father and Kevin Lee was the son. So when you say Big Monster and Little Monster, it was a father-son operation at the top with an army. It was almost like it was the consumer tech version of Entourage. There were like 50 people that followed them around at CES. It was like a movie. So anyway,
and Noel's on a scooter, so you could never miss him, with like flames on it. So when a scooter comes around, a Segway with flames, you don't often forget it. And he had all of his cars matched his scooters, so he was quite a presence.
Yeah. So you're explain what a SPIF program, how
SPIF
retail works, because I don't think people know what it takes to get something on the floor in retail. You know, you can share if you can share that.
So retail is, and it's so funny that like all these digital brands are now opening up stores, because retail back in the day is an absolute effing nightmare on every level, right? Like if you think about what Beats had to do, what they spent, and what Monster spent on power displays. So not only do you have to like have displays of your product, your new product no one's tried before, you have to then hire an army of detailers that go in and fix all the broken products that get broken weekly. Because we used to joke that like by the time Best Buy closed the doors at night, there was like a group of flying monkeys that would like run around the place and just destroy everything.
Right.
The SPIF programs were really, Noel would have literally giant pep rallies with blue shirts, which were the Best Buy workers, and give them all kinds of contests, incentives. So if you sell this many headphones, you can get a free Beats headphone, or, you know, employee purchase programs, everything you can imagine to get people really hyped up on selling a product. Because again, if you're selling a product that has many different variations, like it's headphones, right? When someone walks in, is looking in that headphone category at a retailer, you want to make sure that blue shirt points that person to Beats. Right. And if they're incentivized to sell Beats versus Bose versus someone else, they're going to sell that.
Right. And I know you used to have mystery shoppers.
Yes. Yes, exactly. And all of that. So Noel really invested heavily in North American retail, which is where Best Buy got its start.
That, and I think in the InMotion, when you have a guy in an airport who's bored between a flight and he wants to do something to make himself or make herself feel better, InMotion, or one of those other ones now, where you go in and all of a sudden you're buying a $400 pair of headphones that you might never have walked in on a Saturday morning to get, but you're getting on the flight and you're putting on the newest, coolest headphones as you're sitting in business class. That's where I would go into InMotion and play that I didn't know what I was doing and say, so what have you got? Tell me about it. I go, well, you've seen these Beats, whatever the model was at the time. And I go, well, how does that compare to the Sonys? Oh, it kills the Sonys or whatever. And you knew that they were highly motivated to drive you in that direction.
Exactly. And InMotion definitely was an anchor for us early on, and it helped us with international. But truly the first probably year and a half, 2 years of the brand was driven by Best Buy sales. Right. And early on, it had very few Amazon sales because people didn't really know what it was. And so, you know, until the brand really had notoriety, we started to see a big spike in Amazon. But early on, it was like, go to Best Buy, put those things over your head, have like this crazy base experience, and have the blue shirts pushing this as like the newest, coolest thing that you have to have. Right. And that's where Noel was great. So I think Noel was great for the brand early on. So that was all the positive. On the negative side, you know, when you're in bed with a company, you want to understand like what are they great at and what are they not so good at? Because if your flag is planted with theirs, you need to know what their strengths and weaknesses were. So Noel certainly had a great North American footprint and really knew how to sell in the big box retailers. He had very little presence and very little distribution in Europe. So if we want to become a global brand, that was going to be on us. And that became really apparent. The other thing is that, you know, and it almost followed a cable model. What started happening is Noel would go into these retailers as Beats was, you know, accelerating, and say, oh, if you want Beats, you have to take my cables. You have to take all this stuff. So Frank, like it was basic. So Beats started building the rest of his business and propping up the rest of his business. And then which got messy, right? In terms of like how the accounting worked. And so there were a lot of like, just again, stuff got super entwined, and it's a family run business, right?
You're muddling priorities.
Yeah, exactly. So it's like, you know, when they used to sell early cable packages, you want this, you need to take this too. Right. And so things just get like very intertwined, and it's hard even from an accounting standpoint to start separating things out. So that became problematic. And really, you know, it's when like someone outgrows the parent and outgrows it much faster. And the parent now, and there's that role reversal of now the company that we were riding, getting distribution and using their support, they were starting to use us as support. And so, and I think frankly, Noel didn't understand the power of the Beats brand and thought that Monster was a part of that brand.
Right.
And Monster was really the infrastructure to support the brand early on. It was not the brand. And Noel fundamentally didn't understand that and maybe didn't want to. And that's hard, right? It's like his baby. He created that business. He used to have his name on a stadium. So it's hard to know that like this other company is outshining you. And if
Right.
you're not in the mix, this company can still do whatever it needs to do and more.
Right.
So I think there was a lot of emotional, like in all these things, right? It's as much about emotion as it is about like the reality of the situation.
Right. So eventually everybody moved on. But you were at Beats. You were the CEO. What was your title at Beats? Because I want to get it.
I was the initial CEO for
Right.
the first 18 months, and then Jimmy took over as CEO, which he was still. Jimmy was the most, he was still running the shots, calling the shots from behind the scenes. And I became the GM of sort of product and technology, and really that was when we were shifting from really relying on Monster to build all of our products to building them ourselves.
Right. And that's when you were in Water Garden?
Yeah, the early days I was in Interscope, and then we moved over to Water Garden.
Right. So then you left Beats in what, 2013?
Yeah,
or 2013.
Being 13.
Okay. And that what happened after that? You took a break.
I left. So the initial deal with HTC was a deal that I was involved in, and then which was a really kind of crazy, like we do a deal with HTC, they're on the rise. The minute the deal's done, HTC just starts to plummet and we start to accelerate. So it was
I have 2 HTC phones that they gave me that have Beats technology in them. I have the 3D phone. If you remember that, it took 3D pic. And HTC had amazing products and then they didn't. And I've still again, you were on the inside there. How did HTC, what went, was it a change of senior management? Because their products for a period of time were unbelievable. I mean, I thought they were going to shoot past everybody.
Yeah, HTC. So that's why I actually created Beats Audio, because and I really created for a couple different reasons. One, I wanted something that we could license that Monster had no participation in.
Right.
And it became really advantageous when we did the HTC deal because we were able to license Beats Audio into the HTC phones.
Right.
So we actually had, a high margin licensing business. HTC was just interesting, right? They were an OEM, right? They were a really good manufacturer and they manufactured for a ton of different handset companies in Asia. And I think, although you were so involved, so Ted, you get every product first, right? You have like, I mean, what you need to do is a documentary, like people do their sneaker closets, you need to do your product closet. So you can see like the evolution of technology, right? Like
if you saw what I have in my hotel room here right now that I brought with me to New York that I felt I couldn't be without for 4 days, it's like when the maid comes in the room, I'm sure she's calling security saying, I think he's building a bomb. There's a bunch of wires. There's stuff lined up. I have 5 extension cords connected here in the room. So yes, I love technology.
Yeah, and I really do think that your closet is literally a living history museum of the emergence of technology. So I actually think I'm having you pitch your next show to Discovery Channel or something.
Well, now, I want to talk about that, and then we're going to get to the present day. But I wanted people to understand you've lived this for. I mean, you're only 15 years old, and you've lived this for
thank you so much.
For 2 decades. Seriously, I mean, you're one of the. When I met you, I mean, you and Sharon and Danny. Was it Danny or
and Dan Benjamin and Danny Lau?
Yeah, Danny and Dan Benjamin. I thought you were the. I mean, for like, at the time, geek nerds building tech, you were the coolest kids that I'd met.
We were actually. It was funny. We had like all these like small company moments where we pitched Apple before. This is again before the iPod, and I think it was. Was it Ruben that was the one who was in charge of like
Andy Rubin?
Yeah. And here we are, this like, we're all young. We're like, we're a tiny company and we just had Apple. We showed them this and they got so angry. I don't know if it's because like they didn't think of it or whatever. And they started screaming at us like, you're never going to get this out the door. Like, and they were so mad. And then they literally, and we're all like, oh my God, what's wrong? And then he left the room. and came back and started yelling at us some more. Like so we've had all these like crazy experiences because again, we were early, like, we were doing things that no one had ever done before. And when going back to GM, it was so stressful being a tier 1 supplier to GM that our lead engineer who was working on it had to go to, there's an area, I can't remember the town in Georgia, but they have a big assembly plant there.
Right.
And the Fat Noise system was it was the first system in minivans. So it had a whole like audio-visual system that we were powering. So video and video games in the back, obviously audio in the front. And Johnson Controls was creating the overhead bin that like
wow.
was going to live in.
Johnson Control, they do like factories.
So we had to go to do like to the assembly line to watch the installation, make sure there were no problems on the software side or whatever. We were so far out of our league, it was insane. So this one guy was out there, and I think that we had some problem with it. It was software, firmware. I think it was a firmware issue, right? Something happened and the line shut down, and he almost didn't recover. Like it was like the pressure and the stress of trying to do that. So when he left, his anxiety attack was going on for multiple days. He brought a plane down. They had to land a plane in Chicago coming back to LA because his anxiety, they thought he was having a heart attack.
Oh my God.
Because he's trying to
but on the other end of it, just so everybody understands, I had a Fat Noise system in an Audi A6. All that was involved in making it work was unscrewing the 6-disc changer in the trunk and then screwing in the Fat Noise unit and plugging the same cable that was coming from the head unit in the passenger compartment into the Fat Noise unit. And all of a sudden I went from 6 discs to the equivalent of, I don't know how many thousands of discs. And it worked flawlessly. And this is such a first world problem. When I got my A8L, you had to explain to me what the what was it?
The automotive bus, the most bus.
What the most bus was, that it was an optical bus that locked Fat Noise out of the signal chain, and that I had to go back. I had to go back to black and white TV. I had to go back to a 6-disc changer because later people figured out how to get around it. But at the time, I couldn't just take it out of the A6, put it in the A8, and I literally had a nicer car with inferior audio, and I liked the A6 better because of that. So you learned a lot. I could do the whole hour now on history. You left, you took a break, but if I remember correctly, when we reconnected a couple of years ago, someone had come into you with an idea at Beats.
Yeah, someone come in with an idea and they put a pair of shoes on the table, and I thought, is this a joke? We make headphones here. And I tried what he was creating, which was really this, using haptics and this whole idea of like the energy of music, the feeling, not the listening, but the feeling of it, how you feel it through your body. And I put on this pair of shoes and I was like, oh my God, this is crazy. And I thought it was one of those aha moments. Like I've been thinking about, like I've been in audio for so long, but audio has always been about headphones and how you listen, and listening is a deliberate act, but your sensory system, which is like hearing is a sense. And so if you involve your sensory system, it's organic, it's involuntary. And so having that experience where I put these shoes on, I was like, oh my God, this is crazy. This is kind of like it's like going from black and white to Technicolor. And we all tried it. This was in like right before I left Beats, like the end of 2012. And we all thought this was amazing, but we were heads down building headphones. And so this inventor came back. I stayed in touch with him because I was really kind of just blown away by just what a unique experience. And then he came back to me and showed me what happens when you add visuals into the mix. So video games, movies. And then this was when we thought, and this was in 2015, and VR. And this is when, the second wave of VR after the 90s, 2016 is going to be its new, like it's going to happen. And now on the third go around, it looks like it might actually really start happening. But I said, okay, we got to get this out of your garage and let's go build this. Because he was a tinkerer and inventor. And like what always happens is, then the rubber hits the road and you're like, oh my gosh, I'm building something that no one's ever done before. And it's about energy and how do you and haptics, and it's, it's integrated into soft goods.
Explain what haptics is. I mean, sometimes we talk in shorthand. Yeah. What is haptics, so people understand?
Haptics is really, there's a different, but you can call it force motion. So it's like how you think about your phone has like a little taptic engine, like you can feel things on an Xbox controller. You feel that kind of rumble.
Feedback,
So it's really about the energy and feeling of vibration. And so what our system really does is it takes an audio signal, it converts it into the vibrations that are resonant there and puts that into your body. It's almost like your body becomes a resonant speaker cabinet. It started with music, but it became really clear to me that there's so much more going on here. There's this neuroscience, right? Like what happens when you actually put this energy into someone's system, you can light up their sensory system. And whether you're pairing it with a visual or it's just audio, you can get people into different brain states. And during this time, my father had been diagnosed with Alzheimer's. And I had really been looking at like the brain and looking at neuroplasticity. And, you know, if there is such thing as neuroplasticity, which obviously there is, which is the idea of your brain, like if people that have traumatic brain injuries, if there's an area in your brain that's used for your motor coordination or walking through a traumatic brain injury or stroke, you can actually rewire your brain to have other parts take over. I see someone saying great for music therapy. Yes, it is. And so
pause. If anybody has any questions or comments, please feel free to jump in. So go ahead. And I want to say one of the things somebody had said to me a few weeks ago, we had a talk about audio reproduction. And they said there are frequencies that your body feels and doesn't hear. And it's not necessarily out of hearing range, but the experience of feeling those frequencies is a whole different, again, neural experience than
it's so
that
crazy.
audio.
Your feet, which happen to be, anyone who understands reflexology and, all that stuff. But like, what's crazy is your feet have these mechanoreceptors in them, which are just like fibers, right? And they're actually wired, literally, take vibrational input. So there's 4 different kinds, but 2 of the 4, one is called Meissner's corpuscles, and they take super low base frequencies. So they are designed for 20 to 50 hertz. Then you have a thing called Passian corpuscles, and those are designed for 150 to 200 or to 300 hertz. So you are literally physiologically wired for this information. And why? Probably because back in the day when we were, before shoes, before streets, before civilization, if there was wild animals or something, you wanted to hear it. You want to take environmental information from the ground, right? This is about fight or flight and safety, right? Like, okay, there's a herd of wild animals. There's an explosion there. Or there's going to be an eruption of a volcano or thunder. Like, you actually hear all this. We don't hear it now because we wear shoes. So you're just really restoring a connection to the ground and to the energy of sound. And so it's really powerful for people. And so what happened was that I was like, okay, this started as music. Obviously, gaming is huge for, but there's so much in health and wellness and human performance. And really, this is a big development platform. I have EMDR therapists who've come in. For those of you who don't know what EMDR is, it's eye movement desensitization reprocessing. It works with bilateral stimulation. It's used a lot by the military for PTSD. So I have people really like remapping what we've developed, because everything we do is in stereo, to deliver EMDR, and we're in different trauma centers. I have people that are using it who actually went through rounds of chemotherapy that had some neuropathy in their feet. I have people using it just because they want to use it for meditation or soundscapes and feeling rainstorms. Other people use it for, gaming, right? To be able to feel the enemy. So it's such a kind of a personal thing for people, and they all use it in different ways. And so I've been
walking around New York, listening to my New York. I have a playlist to walk around New York that basically starts out at a mid-level in terms of beats per minute, accelerates, and then slows down, because it knows probably about 25 minutes into it, I'm going to be huffing and puffing. But I've been doing it with the shoes on this week.
Yeah, it's really, and it's one of these things where as VR takes off, and people live more and more of their lives in a digital universe, or if we all end up in the metaverse.
Yeah.
Right. You want to feel these experiences are not real to your brain unless you feel them, right? So think of like and we've done a bunch of the neuroscience studies. If your brain gets 3 inputs, I feel it, I see it, I hear it, and they're synchronized and they're correlated, then your brain thinks it's happening, right? And it can react.
And that was one of the early problems in spatial audio was I would hear a sound off to my left, But when I would turn to my left, the sound was still off to my left. Now, when I turn to my left, the sound is right in front. It basically, with head tracking and with spatial audio, it actually, I hear something off to my left or my right. When I look, I'm now hearing it right in front of me. And that was the gee whiz for me. Once they could do that, then I started, your suspension of disbelief increases.
Well, also the whole thing when I was at Harman, the whole holy grail for all the headphone companies was like, how do I make a headphone feel like a speaker in the room, right? So I want to take the sound that you hear between your ears and I want to have it feel like it's coming from the room. And that's a really tough math problem because, again, everyone's ears are different. The space between their ears are different, different head sizes. And so no one really has tackled that. And I think spatial audio, listen, audio is having its heyday. Like it's the oldest technology that's like finally getting with Clubhouse and with all these different audio applications. Everyone's looking at audio. I mean, the Apple announcement on spatial audio is amazing. But again, you don't want to just hear everything here. You really are designed to hear throughout your entire body. And so we're just augmenting. Right.
So you then form a company called DropLabs.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And so talk about that journey now and what the product is. I mean, we can, I can possibly pull it up and show it on the screen if you want me to, or I don't know if
you can follow us.
You can do share screen.
Okay. Well, anyway, you can follow us on Instagram. It's DropLabs. It's very sort of entertainment focused, but there's a lot of health and human performance work that we're doing sort of behind the scenes. But, we went into, I said, okay, we're going to start this company and we're going to go build this thing because I was obsessed with it for many different reasons. And, it was this kind of thing of like, I think there was a little bit of hubris early on, like, how hard can this be? I've done like CE for so long. How hard can soft goods be? It shouldn't be that hard. I really had my butt handed to me. Like it was really like trying to merge soft goods and consumer electronics was much more difficult than I anticipated because they're completely different construction methods. If you look at like what consumer electronics do in technology, it's all 3D and it's robotics. And then, a lot of, soft goods, it's still cut and sew. I mean, it's glue in ovens. Like it's really the same production processes they've been doing for 40 years. And so we've had some kind of hilarious moments in China where we literally hand a module with all these electronics in it to someone on a production line at a shoe factory. And they're like, and they just hold up a glue brush and start gluing all of the wires. I'm like, no. Like just because you see something doesn't mean it needs glue. So there was like, that. And certainly like the difference between an electronics factory in terms of like quality and in terms of like their processes versus a shoe factory that has done something the same for 50 years. There's still a small person cutting with scissors patterns out to make shoes.
Right. And what's interesting is you mentioned earlier about VR. Just I want to touch on this for 1 second. In 94, 95, I went to Boston and was at MIT Media Lab seeing some people and went over to Cambridge by Harvard Square where you were at.
Yes.
So you probably went there. Cybersmith in Harvard Square had a VR pod. It was behind the Harvard Square Theater. Cybersmith was a computer software, but entertainment software store similar to like I think they also owned Booksmith. And they had one of Jaron Lanier's VR headsets there, which looked like Darth Vader's mask at the time. And it was clunky and it was whatever. And they were using Space Ace, Don Bluth's animated software. And you had a lightsaber and you stood in this like ring that stopped you from falling and you played with VR. And so when people started talking about VR 5-6 years ago going, have you heard about VR? And I went, no, what is it? And, I've been in it for over 2 years. I said, go look up Jaron Lanier.
I know Jaron Lanier.
Yeah, so the history of all this, there was in 96, 97, somewhere in there was a wearable technology fashion show at the Beverly Hilton put on by the MIT Media Lab. And it was clothes with sensors in it and biofeedback devices and whatever. That was almost 25 years ago. So we're still at the beginning of all this.
The very beginning.
There's been a lot of work done. It's not something that any of us thought up in the last, 90 days. And here's a new idea. It's been evolving in the background, for at least 20 years.
Too, because I was talking to MIT literally 6 months ago. They have an organization called AFOA, and it's a lot of like government grants with MIT labs to push technology forward. So one of them was weaving optical fibers into yarn, right? And so that now once you have that, and so, I'm like, great. Do you have any samples? Because I want to start working with that, because it's all about movement of energy. And they're like, the minute you say that, they're like, so that's like, we're several years out, right? So it's really, it's that leap of like, there's incredible things happening in the lab. My whole background has always been like, give it to the hands of the consumer as quickly as possible, and then let them sort of shape it. But a lot of this stuff is still not at the place where it can leave the lab. Now, the interesting thing about LA is that because of China, and anyone who's manufacturing in China is having, besides IC shortages, besides like an insane tariff for most consumer electronics, like literally 25%, that doesn't look like Biden's going to roll back. And still with the pandemic, you still have literally 2 to 3 week quarantine if you arrive in China. And then if you have to go build something in a factory, it's another 2 weeks in a factory dorm before you can get on the factory floor. It's really forcing a lot more manufacturing here, which is great because one, it'll bring technology out of labs quicker. And LA is actually having a heyday right now. All of downtown LA, they're spinning up a whole bunch of different factories around shoemaking, which is great for us. And so now you'll see more and more small runs of all kinds of things. And so LA is really, I think, going to bring manufacturing back. I was talking to Foxconn the other day. They're going to be building another big facility in the US, I think in Texas. So it'll allow some of this stuff potentially to get out of the lab faster.
Very cool. So you have been public facing for about 9 months now, or is it longer in terms of shipping?
In shipping, we've been shipping really since, oh my God, when have we been shipping since? Since early, really for almost a year, but in super small quantities. I've used this as like a giant beta test to kind of see what's working, what's not working. We actually made an announcement today. We're actually starting real distribution. We have a big partnership with a large Amazon distributor, and we have a new product coming out because again, if you launch a product, you listen to what people want, and people want indoor shoes and slippers because they're using this for gaming and meditation. And so you'll see something, a new product come out for us the next couple months, different form factor. But so we're going to start to go out in larger, with larger distribution and also a bunch of partnerships that we're going to be announcing soon too.
What was the biggest, we hadn't thought of that or we didn't see? In other words, what's something that you got in feedback that was counter to your initial, your initial precepts? And then what is some of the other feedback in terms of that reinforces that you're on the right track?
So I didn't get any feedback counter to what I thought, because a lot of it was like, I kind of knew I was building something that the use cases need to get revealed, right? Like I knew a lot of like get it in more and more people's hands and it would be revealed to us. So I had a hunch that gaming was going to drive a lot of the business, which has definitely been the case. Also, that was some of the feedback we got. I was hoping, I didn't know there was going to be a lot of health and wellness applications. And so far that has proven correct. And so I'm getting the early validation of the areas that I want to go into are real. But again, also when we created this, or the inventor, the whole idea was like, you have this with you all the time. You're mobile, you're constantly going, and the world shuts down and everyone's home for a year and a half. And so what people like to do at home and how they engage and how much time they spend in their home on screens has changed dramatically. And back to normal, I don't know what that is, right? I'm getting on a plane this afternoon. You just got on a plane, but I was seeing emails this morning. Most people are, especially companies, are not opening their offices back up again. like
Right.
in the way that they were before. So you're still going to have a pretty much at-home workforce, at least part-time.
Right.
So we're just seeing like, and again, we have a lot of data and analytics running through the platform, is that people use these the way they would use headphones. They use them throughout the day. They might be meditating with them. They might be listening to music. They might be watching a movie. There's a lot of video game playing. And then all the brain studies that we're doing right now are yielding some really interesting results. So that for me is really exciting.
I told you, Maggie and I went down to Tulum, Mexico, a few months ago, back in January, and I brought the shoes with me, and I'm using them, and it's great. But we were in a bar, and she rightly said, "Would you take your headphones off and please talk to me?" And I took the headphones off, but I let the music keep going on my Samsung, and I was getting the DropLabs experience in my shoes while the music was playing in the bar. And I wrote to Todd, who works. It's Trevor. Trevor. I wrote to Trevor and said, "Have you thought about just opening the mic in my phone and then taking that and feeding it, giving me the feedback in the shoes?" And he goes, "Look, everybody has an idea every day, but that's a good idea." I said, "It just was soothing sitting in the bar." It was like, I was, even though it wasn't synced to the music, because it was basically rock and roll that they were playing, it sounded close.
Well, absolutely. Like we do stuff with, I'll put in like not music. Sometimes I'll use alpha waves, or I'll use different things to get you into sort of a certain state. Like we're doing work with Exos, which is a big human performance company, and they're using this technology to get athletes into flow state faster, where they listen to the music they like. I just do it where I'll just use vibrations, right, because it calms me down. So we looked at actually putting a microphone in the shoes, but we were going to pick up too much ambient noise and not the right. So it's a nice filtering exercise, but we have absolutely looked at that. And there's some stuff coming up that not just shoes, but other areas of the body that you'll see coming out from us that are going to use some of those applications. But Ted is, by the way, for those of you who don't, one of the greatest beta testers ever. Because he's so passionate about it and he's seen so many products. And so if you want to get really great product feedback from anyone, send Ted a product and let him go to town.
For 30 seconds, I had one of the managers of the Ace Hotel here up in the room, and I said, I've stayed here for 10 years. You've had at least 4 television systems in the hotel. The first one was a pure IPTV system that worked great during the day, but when everybody came back to their room and got on email, it took all the bandwidth, and all of a sudden the TV looked like a Jackson Pollock painting. There was forget pixelization; it was unrecognizable. And I said, "Have you ever sat in a room and actually used the system?" And I said, "I'm not." I said, "You know me well enough. I'm not trying to I'm not criticizing. I'm saying, check the experience out. And here's the disconnect between whoever sold you this latest system and what the end user in the hotel room is getting." So yes, I love doing this, but I've loved watching, what you've done over the years. Your former partner in crime, Sharon, and Danny, and
Sharon, who's one. Sharon Graves, have to give a little shout out for her. Amazing technologist and one of the greatest pie bakers ever.
Oh,
dessert maker. She's won the LA Bake Off several times. So, and she had a company called Boulevard,
right,
which is a catering company, which is still available, and the best sweets you'll ever have in LA.
She's great. So, and as you know, for people that are listening, people that are watching, Susan and I have been friends for years. And my first indication, if you know me, is who can I introduce you to? Who can I connect you with? Who is a kindred spirit? So I've brought a few people to Susan, and the minute they see it, everybody else's reaction is the same as mine. This is brilliant, whether they've ended up working together or not. You're onto something. What you're doing is a lot of fun. I talk about serendipity a lot. Maggie, my girlfriend, who I mentioned earlier, showed me a contest that you were running.
That was incredible. That was crazy.
Was unbelievable. Sorry. You're running this contest to win a pair of shoes inspired by Sia.
Right.
And she goes, I'm going to enter the contest. I went, good luck, have fun. 2 days later, she walks in and she goes, I won the contest. And I went, I had nothing to do with that. And she goes,
there are a couple thousand people that entered.
And then Susan calls me and goes, is Maggie your Maggie that I've met? And I went, yeah. She goes, she won the contest. And I went, she accused me of calling you. She says, people here, it literally serendipitously, Maggie won so we now both have our Unagi scooters, and we go out with the shoes on, and like, but she won in the what happens in the world. She won the contest.
And it was so funny because I was gonna rig it so that she goes, she's really excited, but I didn't, because I just decided, okay, that's not a good thing. And then the fact that I was like, oh my God, she won anyway. And that was like thousands of people entered. It's like, right. That was the universe saying Maggie really was supposed to have those shoes.
Right. So there are other companies out there, I won't get into it, that are working in haptic technology. A couple of them, we have mutual friends at. When in the gaming side of things, with gaming chairs that are available, Razer had one that was co-developed with Subpack. With what you're doing with shoes, I keep looking to see, you may know that they exist, about haptic accessories where I've got something on my forearm or I've got something around my knees that in Call of Duty I get shot and I'm feeling that I got shot in my shoulder. I'm feeling that
it's all like, and again, it's like all these companies, and there's a few of us that are really pushing that. If sometimes it feels like we're pushing the boulder uphill because it's going to explode, but it's we're still kind of building it, and showing definitely game developers and you guys who are doing all the audio and women who are for gaming, kind of what this can be. But yes, I mean, like I said, as we move closer and closer to the metaverse, haptics will be right alongside, because again, your brain needs to feel things in order for you to be emotionally connected to an experience.
Right. Who's doing stuff that you admire out there? Not necessarily in the same vertical you're in right now, but what's the coolest thing you've seen saying, geez, that was a great idea?
Of course,
I know you don't have a lot of spare time.
No, I know. I'm trying to think what are some cool ideas I've seen. Well, I still really admire Peloton. Like, I'm just blown away by what they've built. On the product side, I haven't seen as much recently that I'm like, I'm very curious on Sing because the product design is so beautiful. And I'm
about to reach out to Rio Karef tomorrow to go tell me more about Sing, because I saw an article on them this morning. It looks amazing.
I'm super, super curious to see kind of how that's going to, transpire. And like I said, the product design is absolutely extraordinary. There's a lot of, I've got friends doing marketplaces that I really like to really empower, it's empowering creators. I'm seeing a lot, there's a lot of great stuff out there, like Obsession, things like that, working with athletes and just giving people democratization and access. Has been really cool to see that. I don't know, I'm really so heads down.
By the way, if people are looking for Sing, it's SYNG. And the chief, I don't know if it's commercial officer, creative, is a guy named Rio Karef, who was at Magic Leap. And before that was the co-creator of YouTube, Vivo.
Right, and then yes, he was at Magic Leap.
He was at Vivo, and then he might have been at Universal when you were working with Interscope. He was running digital at Universal Music Group, and so Rio's a really creative guy. And there was I think it was on LinkedIn, a story that Sing's close to debuting.
Yeah,
and then I also it's going to give DeViola a run for their money.
Yeah, I mean, it's very expensive, so it'll be interesting to see at the price point, because again, I think it's like $1,800, so it's a significant investment for people. So certainly going after the audiophile group first. Also, I got to give huge kudos to the Whoop band. Like, I'm blown away by how quickly that kind of like quant interface that has become so ubiquitous for people. I think they've done a fantastic job really getting rid of getting data, getting real data, but having something really simple on the hardware side and really kind of proving out the subscription model. I think they've done a killer job at that. But yeah, there's just, like I said, I think there's gonna be some really interesting stuff in robotics that are gonna come out too. I think that's gonna be another big wave. There's a lot of really interesting emerging robotic tech that could
robotics
be
in consumer robotic tech or in
it's going to be industrial.
Like I have a Jibo at home, which I'm probably the only guy in my zip code that has a Jibo, because unfortunately it got delayed 2 years. And in the interim, Alexa came out. And so do you want an $800 robot that tells you what time it is? Or do you want a $30 Echo Spot that tells you what time it is?
Yeah, I mean, the robotic innovation that we're seeing now is absolutely not at the consumer level, right? It's like looking at like, how do you get robotics to replace very low level, like wage labor that can just do repetitive tasks over and over again, right? They never get tired and things like that. So like I'm seeing a lot of really interesting emerging robotics platforms that could be they were going to be super interesting.
Right.
But it's consumer, no, not yet.
Okay. The thing that I keep threatening for the last 2 shows, 2 weeks ago, I had Gary Shapiro from CES on. And 2 weeks before that, I had Arabian Prince, who you've met.
I'm going to see him today.
You're going to see him today. I want to give a plug. We're doing a panel. And if Christy can jump in and give people the details, possibly can people log on to what we're doing later today? Let's see if she joins us. In the meantime, Ultimate Ears, there she is. She's coming in.
Hi.
Hi, Christy.
Can you hear me?
Can you let everybody, yes, we can hear you perfectly. Can you let everybody know if they wanted to log on to the Houston Tech Rodeo thing? Is that possible, or is it a closed event?
No, it is open. They can go to our website, mediatech.ventures, and look at our events page. It's called Media Tech and Money, and it starts at 6 p.m. Central Time. Okay, it will also live stream through our YouTube channel.
Okay. So come join us for that, because Arabian's going to be with us.
Yeah, and, the original, the O of the OG.
Right. I keep calling Susan up going, here's somebody I think you ought to meet. You're going to like him. But Ultimate Ears sent me their new automatic molding headphones.
Oh, by the way, I heard those are great. What do you think?
I'm scared. No, but I'm going to move over here for 1 sec. Well, let's see. Can I get that far? Hang on 1 second. Forgive me, everybody. Take off my mic so I don't pull the computer off the table. 1 second. Okay. And again, put my mic back on for a second. Got my headphones back on. So a month ago, Ultimate Ears sent me the UE Fits. The thing is, once you open them up and start to do it, you have to do it. I've never suffered performance anxiety. I now have performance anxiety that I'm going to open these up, go to do the molding in my ears, and I'm going to screw it up. So I'm going to watch their videos and some other people that have reviewed them. And I promise in 2 weeks, I've got Jim Aswad as my guest from Variety magazine, from Variety, the entertainment newspaper. And on that show, I'm going to either have them done. I will have shot a video, but I'm worried that I have to call Dan at Ultimate Ears and go, I did something wrong. I put them in my nose instead of my ears, and the mold's all wrong.
No pressure.
No pressure at all. But anyway, we've run about 10 minutes over, but I don't care. Hopefully everybody's enjoyed it. We'll do our thing a little bit later this afternoon.
Thank you for hosting. As I was saying, as Ted said to me this morning, it's going to be just like we're talking, like we're at some restaurant together. So we just have to figure out which deli that we
exactly. Exactly. If everybody should check out the shoes. They're amazing. I've been using them now for almost 7 months. And I'm telling you, walking around New York list. I have this playlist. It's changed the whole experience.
Oh, that's awesome.
Go to DropLabs, DROPLABS.com. Check out the shoes. Is that Nipper?
that is my dog seeing that there's another dog. Oh, and I will say one thing is that if you do go to DropLabs, we'll set a special code for Ted. It'll say Ted Media Tech. If you type that in, we'll give you a $25 discount.
Wow. Thank you so much.
I'm sorry. connecTed. connecTed is what we'll do. So if you type in the code connecTed, you will get either a free gaming cable if you want it or $25 off the purchase price. Okay. So connecTed.
I love it. Thank you so much. This has been a pleasure. We'll sign off together. I'm not going to do any benedictions. So Christy, take us out. Susan, I'll see you in a couple hours.
Yes, thank you.
This was as much fun as I thought it would be. I hope I didn't talk too much.
Never.
All right.
Check it. We'll do your Discovery Channel show too.